Zero. Welcome again, ladies and gentlemen, to The View from Here Behind Enemy Lines. We're speaking today with Joe Wolverton. Unfortunately, he's on the road and unable to chat with us face to face because he's driving. So he is doing an audio interview today. Joe, welcome to the podcast. I was looking over some of the stuff you have here. You are an attorney for the John Birch Society.
That's right. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, I used to hear when I was younger, and I never, I'd heard about the John Birch Society when I was a teenager, never knew much about them. Then, when I was in my 20s and I had children, I used to take my boys to Bowcraft, which was down on Route 22 in New Jersey. And some people told me, "Oh, you shouldn't go there. That's owned by the John Birch Society." I said, "Yeah, so." And they said, "Oh, they're racist and this and that." But from what I understand, you guys have members of every race and creed, right?
Oh goodness, yes, sir. If you're interested in liberty, I don't care what color your skin is and what religion you belong to. Let's just join arms and work together to restore liberty to this people. That's all that matters to us.
Last year, I was at a Tea Party meeting, and we were
Mhm.
introduced to the John Birch Society, and that's when we found out, essentially, you guys are constitutionalists,
Yes,
and
sir.
which explains why you're also presumed to be a racist. And if you're white, well, forget about it. You got to be a Nazi. Okay, so you're constitutionalist and you're white. You're anathema. So,
Yeah, you're
so
all the bad. You're all the bad things. If you're the descendant of European white men who built civilization, you're the result of centuries of bad things. Don't you
right.
know?
Well, I was wondering, do you know the reason why that was initiated? That big lie about your group?
Yeah, I think originally it was a way to discredit the accurate predictions and observations made by Robert Welch in the very beginning. Dr. Welch was an incredible polymath and self taught individual who recognized patterns in history that were being overlooked by most people. And when he started to make these observations and to issue these warnings about where our society was headed and who it was that was shepherding our society toward these terrible things. There were many people who benefited from the terrible things that were being done who wanted to shut him up and shut the society. And of course, it's been known since the beginning of time that if you poison the well, then that's the easiest way to keep people from drinking from it. And so if we can tell people, well, everything the John Birch Society says is racist, even people who don't take the initiative themselves to investigate the truth of allegations, they will accept the truth of those allegations from others. And that way, if you have people who are influential enough saying the same thing about the John Birch Society in the right ways and in the right to the right people, those lies will get disseminated more quickly than the truth ever could. And so that was a way to distract from the fact that Robert Welch was accurately observing and predicting the problems that would soon beset our society.
What time period did this happen?
The late 50s.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I was I was brought up into believing that the John Birch Society was there was something mysteriously evil about you guys, only to find out last year. Because the biggest problem that I guess the average American has, and I'm talking about the average American, is that they hear information like that from so-called reputable sources,
Hmm.
and because that's not their shtick, that's not the thing that they pursue, um, then that information is just accepted.
That's right.
So we are cursed by the cult of experts.
Well, and that's right. And it's been millennia that that's been true because you have, for example, in the record of Thucydides, he records that people by and large, don't take the pains to investigate whether something be true or not. Now, mind you, this record was written 2,600 years ago, and he's saying, most people don't take the time to investigate it. They will just believe whatever they're taught first, particularly if they're taught by someone that they believe to be knowledgeable or influential. And so, if you've got someone like Walter Cronkite, if you've got someone like William F. Buckley, if you've got people like this saying, well, we have evidence that the John Birch Society is a bunch of wackos, then you feel that you don't need to do any more investigation because someone that you think is reputable has issued the decree for you.
Right. But it makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah.
By the way,
Yeah.
I want to add to my story before. That didn't stop me from taking the kids to Bowcraft.
There you go. That's right.
But the one of the things that I know that you guys do is you put a collection of information on the voting records of various
Oh, yeah.
individuals, congressmen, senators, etc. So when I saw that, I was like, "Wow!" No,
Yeah, brother. I'm going to tell you that's the thing that strikes fear into the heart of legislators, both federal and state, is we have a team, and God bless them, Peter Rakowski, Christian Gomez, Ty Bodden. We have guys at headquarters of the John Birch Society that practically their entire job is to take the voting records of even the state legislators and compare them to the Constitution to see how constitutionally faithful these representatives are being to their oath of office, wherein they swear to support the Constitution of the United States per Article 6. And these guides, I'm going to tell you, I've had the experience myself of taking a handful of them and going to meetings where my state senator is going to give a little talk, to 20 people. We're talking local government, right? State senator, and him having to completely pivot on message because of the things contained in these Freedom Index legislative scorecards. Because I will give these out to the people at the meeting, and most of them, by and large, are shocked by even the Republicans' lack of fidelity to constitutional principles. I mean, we've got a Republican, and I'm from rural Tennessee, and we've got so-called conservative Republicans representing me, and their score is a 70 out of 100. Well, that's a C minus where I come from. That's hardly the kind of constitutional fidelity that I would expect out of a conservative Republican. And so these people, these scorecards, I'm telling you, if you want to show and you want to literally exercise authority and influence beyond what you thought possible, you go online, and they're completely free on the JBS website. You can just stick in your address. It'll tell you who your representative is, both state and federal, and it will kick out their voting record, and you can print it out at home on PDF. You can print it out and take it to your legislator. And man, I'm talking about instantly you turn people into activists because they realize that whereas we might not have much influence in DC, you've got a lot of influence over your state legislature if you want to exercise it. And those scorecards are worth their weight in gold.
I also,
Here in New Jersey, they're so Democrat, they're so communist Democrat that I don't think they would care. Like there's one congressman, state legislature who keeps sending things to me, emails rather, and
Mhm.
I have answered him on Twitter. I've answered a couple of his emails. Now I can't do it anymore, but I've insulted him because he's just a liar. He's been lying about everything, mainly about Trump and Republicans. But and he's blaming, of course, blaming Republicans. No, he is a congressman. I'm sorry. He's blaming Republicans on the shutdown and claiming
Right.
that he tried to get the thing off, but he voted against CR.
Well, I would say that in my experience, the best way to have influence is consistent communication with people who can be persuaded. That there's a group on either side. There's the Trump derangement people that will never be persuaded that anything Donald Trump does is anything other than evil. And then there's a group of people that no matter what Donald Trump does, it's the right thing and the best thing for us. But I think in the middle, there are a group of people that if you search and if you consistently communicate with them, there are a group of people who can be persuaded that the answer to our societal ills, the cure for our societal ills, is the Constitution. And sadly, people don't know the Constitution, fellas. You present it to them, and they're shocked by the things that are and are not part of the Constitution. And so I think that consistent communication is important.
One of the things, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, one of the things I believe that is true about the John Birch Society is that you guys, even though your education affects the general political mind of individuals, you actually do not back up any political entity.
100%. We do not endorse candidates at
That's it.
all. We endorse the only thing we endorse is I have a personal saying that we use in the society, which is the Constitution, every issue, every time, no exception, no excuses. So that's what we apply, whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, conservative, liberal, libertarian, anarchist, don't care. The standard is the Constitution. If you stay within the boundaries of that document, you and I are friends. If you range outside the authority, then you're a tyrant, and I'm determined to fight you.
Well, is it? I mean, there's a lot of Constitution, and there's no section of it that you're not happy with.
No,
Doesn't matter.
no. I think if we are humble enough to understand where the founding fathers derived those various sections of the Constitution, we will come to appreciate the genius of those sections. And that's what I think the dearth of understanding has led to a a drought of application because we just don't understand that the Constitution, the principles upon which the Constitution was founded are timeless principles of good government that you can find traces of as far back as the Hebrew Bible, right? And you can follow strings of that, philosophy all the way through Athens, Jerusalem, Rome, Sparta, Amsterdam, London, all of these places that have contributed to what is the accretion of Western society. If you understand the inspiration, the sources of those principles, you come to understand how the Constitution is not only timely but timeless. And boy, the answers are right there in front of us if we had the courage to pursue them the way our fathers did. And that's where the rubber hits the road. Do we have the courage to fight against the forces of tyranny the way our fathers did?
We had a wonderful person named John Paul. I'm sorry, Moran,
Hmm.
and he is also a constitutionalist, and he's actually in the process of writing a book to convert the Constitution to an international document because he believes that much in the document.
Hmm.
I don't know if you've heard of him,
I
but
have, yeah.
fantastic. Okay,
He's the head
so
of ops score.
yeah, there you go. So um, the other thing I was thinking about is the interpretation of the 14th Amendment has been used as a justification for um, uh, babies being born in this country and automatically being American citizens,
Hmm.
which, as I understand, the intent of that was to handle children of slaves
Yeah.
That's right.
that were recognized as being Americans, regardless of their status, and they
Right.
were de facto presumed to be um, citizens because of that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then that information was perverted to justify um, uh, the uh, the illegals from their having their kids here.
Hmm.
Yeah, run over
Now,
the border, have the kid, and then go back. But the
what
kid's American. Come
exactly?
back.
What language were they using that they were perverting to do that? Because uh, wasn't it just implied? Was it actually written out that it was just for the slaves?
It was not written out that it was just
Yeah.
for the slaves. It was understood because it was in the post Civil War era that this is what was understood by that. However, it was not specified. You look at something like the 13th Amendment, for example, another Civil War, so called Civil War amendment, and you notice that it says slavery, involuntary servitude is unconstitutional, except as a case of if you're convicted of a felony. Well, that makes involuntary servitude legal, right? And so under the 14th Amendment, the people that created the amendment, I'm talking about mainly Senator Howard from Michigan, he understood that what he was trying to do was make it where the children of former slaves didn't have to qualify for citizenship after having been their fathers subjected to enslavement.
Mhm.
And that was his intent, and that's a good intent, in my opinion. That's a good intent, right? To recognize that fact. That's and so what happens is you never have any politician who allows something like that to go without being a pretext for tyranny. And so they take and they say, well, if we're going to apply this in one case, let's apply it in another case so as to create a dependent class. And so then you end up having a class of people become dependent on the political class by how they vote. And what we're going to do is we're going to vote in such a way that would reinterpret this statute that we all know what it means and we all know why we're doing it, but now that we've seen the dust settle from the Civil War, we can use this hammer to chisel out new classes of people who can fight against each other for seeming political control. And we can use those conflicts against the others so as to garner votes from them and political control from them. And so you end up having this situation where everybody knows everybody at the time of the founding. And if you go to the Constitutional Convention, the records kept by Madison, you will see the phrase natural born citizen, and you will see the source of it, Emmer de Wadel. They will quote the Swiss jurist Emmer de Wadel, right? And they will say, this is where we got this phrase, this is what it means. However, none of that matters if you allow Marxists and secular humanists to take control of education and divorce our society from those historical roots and to take away the sources of these phrases, these original inspirations, and we have no idea where it comes from. So then we just sit about arguing, well, what does it mean to be a natural born citizen? Well, we don't need to argue that because the founding fathers defined it. But if we keep people from investigating that, from even knowing the source of it, then we keep people arguing about it. And it makes it sound like any argument is just as valid as any other argument, when in reality, if you go back and study the history, which I would encourage y'all to do, I've written innumerable articles on this subject and even debated with Cato Institute and Heritage. They've had me on their podcasts and everything debating this subject with regard to birthright citizenship. The historical record is clear. The founding fathers' purpose in that is clear. What they meant is clear. What Senator Howard meant with the 14th Amendment is clear. However, what is also clear is that those who want to divide this country so that they might command this country, that is also clear, in that they want to make sure and use ignorance as a tool of division.
It's another form of involuntary servitude.
Yes, exactly. 100%.
Right now, because they're using illegal laborers, and they're trying to deny them being removed. These illegal laborers are under duress because they're always concerned about being taken away.
Hmm.
That to me reminds me of slavery.
Well, and that's right. And ultimately, that's the intent. If you read the legislative history of the 13th and 14th Amendments, that's the problem. The problem is so much of it had nefarious intent to begin with. If I had my magic wand, I would immediately repeal the 14th Amendment tomorrow, because all of the Supreme Court's decisions that have taken political questions and created a legislatively active bench have been based on the 14th Amendment, the Equal Protection Clause. If you take that away, equal protection and due process, if you take those things away out of the 14th Amendment, so many of the Supreme Court decisions that we've had to deal with and live with and try to overturn have been based on that 14th Amendment. And if that thing never existed, we would have a much different societal landscape today.
Is that a congressional choice?
It could be, yeah. I mean, ultimately, yes, it's Congress doing what Congress does and punting to the judicial branch so that they don't have to take accountability for decisions. Yeah.
Yeah, they're
Ultimately,
cowards.
because judges don't have to be elected. And so congressmen know the easiest way to avoid any sort of accountability for a position is to punt that question to the judicial branch and let them deal with it.
Nice.
I was listening earlier to Dr. Mark Young on the Blunt Force Truth podcast he does, and he was speaking to someone, and he brought up the fact that about Massey, Senator Massey, who was constantly at odds with the Republican Party and President Trump recently, as of late anyway. And Young, who was very pro-Trump, he pointed out that Massey is actually basing all his decisions and all his voting on the Constitution. Now, since you have that, since you're involved in the society's ratings of people, is that true? I mean, is Massey more constitutionalist than most of our legislators?
He is the most consistently constitutional legislator.
Wow.
They're
Okay,
not
so
even,
there
no
I
one even
disagree.
comes close.
There I disagree with Donald Trump, even though I'm very pro Donald Trump.
Right.
I support him in 99% of what he does.
Exactly. Yes,
But
sir. Me too.
with this, I've been having a problem. And now, after I heard Dr. Young talk about that, Mark Young, he sometimes calls himself doctor because he is the doctor, but he doesn't like to do it too often. He said just to remind people that anybody can do it.
That's right.
Anybody can become a doctor. And he, it changed my opinion of Massey. I'd like to see him win re-election.
Yeah, it's simple as, that's one thing that I tell people is you don't have to hide behind an opinion. You don't have to hide behind a blog. You don't have to hide behind influencers. You simply go to the website. I think it's thefreedomindex.org. Stick in Thomas Massey's name and look, you'll see that far and away he is the most constitutionally consistent legislator for the past past several years.
Okay, so it's the website is thefreedomindex.org.
Thefreedomindex.org. Yes, sir.
Right. Okay.
Um, Joe, I have another question,
Sure.
and that is about rights.
Hmm.
Now, rights were originally believed to be something that was inherent and basically the product of God.
Hmm.
Okay.
Not
Now,
human. God.
yes, yeah,
Excuse me.
and I was going to say, if even if you don't believe in God, you might even think that okay, there are certain characteristics within nature in and of itself, which
Hmm.
are the equivalent of a divine intent.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, I'm thinking, and to be honest with you, you're really triggering a lot of ideas, Joe. I'm thinking that um, one of our problems is the lack of belief that there is a divine spark that requires certain characteristics of our behavior to actually be supported, you know. And
Hmm.
the thing is, um, how do you manage communicating with people about rights when the default is often, well, they're given by God? Well, how do you? What's the language that you would use to help people see the necessity or the natural product of our relationship with the source of our creation?
Well, I go right back to the Declaration of Independence because I think, in my study, I think Thomas Jefferson did a masterful job of defining those boundaries in the Declaration of Independence. Because I think the sources from which he drew, for example, he says that when he was uh, pondering what to write in the Declaration of Independence, that he drew from Cicero, that he drew from Sidney, that he drew from Locke. And if you sit there and you take these books that he gave credit to, and Cicero was, murdered 40 something years before Christ was born. So obviously not a disciple, not a Christian, not a believer. But if you read his works, which I'm sitting here and I'm in my mind's eye, I'm seeing my collection of Cicero on my shelf at home, and I'm thinking you could read all of Cicero and be a better Christian, and Cicero never mentions Christ. Now, why? Because you take what he's saying and you renegotiate it in your own context. In my context, I'm a Christian. Does that mean that I expect everyone to understand rights through a Christian construct? No, but it means that that's the way that I'm best able to explain it. And I can use Cicero, I can use Plato, I can use Algernon Sidney, I can use Aristotle. I can take these things and I can reconstruct them using my Christian worldview to make myself an abler and more powerful defender of rights. And I think there's no one who did that better and did that with more elegance and eloquence than Thomas Jefferson did in the Declaration of Independence. And I think it's because he recognized that not everyone was going to have the same prism through which they viewed rights. Some people really were going to be a let's say a Benjamin Franklin who was more of an ardent deist, right? Benjamin Franklin, the way he would sum up his religion is he thinks there's an almighty, that the almighty wound a celestial clock and then walked away and let it tick, right? And that's the way he saw the universe. Now, Jefferson didn't agree with that. James Madison certainly was much more Christian than many of the other ones, George Washington as well. But the point is, if you take that Declaration of Independence and you are a humble seeker of truth and you want to understand where, the source of your rights, and you're someone who genuinely does not believe in a creator as such, you can still come to a place where you understand that your rights are the act of divinity through another process that fits the construct you've created. And at the John Birch Society, we're not a religious organization. I don't care where you get your construct and where you get your ideas, as long as you understand that these rights do not come from parchment, they are pre existing, and that we owe the protection of them to each other. And if you can do that, come one, come all, bring all truth into this place.
Yeah, it's like the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence basically
Absolutely.
just enumerated what we're born with.
Well,
Absolutely.
the Declaration of Independence is the spirit of this country, and
Yeah.
the Constitution is the body.
Yeah, I mean, if you can, this is what I tell people: if you're reading the Constitution, you're missing much of what of the understanding of the Constitution if you're not reading the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence is, like you say, it's the spirit, it animates the Constitution. You can't understand the form, well, the intended form and function of the Constitution, of federalism, of state sovereignty. You can't understand any of that unless you understand the principles elucidated by Thomas Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah, I think that's a problem most people have. We think, and I used to think this way too, the Declaration of Independence was just us telling England, hey, you know what, we're separating, we're going to go our own way, and that's it.
Right.
But it says a lot more than that. It gives reasons. It gives
That's
the
right.
reasons for separation.
There's a long history of why we did that the way we did. And I think that the more we study that, the more in awe we are of just how courageous and correct our founding fathers were. That's in my opinion.
Yep.
Well, fellas, I hate to say goodbye, but I'm about 2 minutes late on my other phone call.
Okay. All right. We're going to let you go. Thank you very much for going. I hope we can get you back in the future again.
Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah,
I will.
There's a lot I'd like to discuss with you.
Yes, sir. I will let y'all know, and I will let Sutton know, and we'll get on in the future.
All right. Just hold on a moment.
I appreciate
make sure it's uploaded.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure.